not yours or my screen. Okay. So ABAB is that intervention, baseline, intervention, baseline. So we did that one. That was like early algebra when you really, before you got to know how hard it really was. Okay. So then an ABAB is it's single subject or single person. So it could be a classroom. It doesn't have to be a single person. Okay, so I'm going to go in the classroom, or I'm going to do what I'm going to do with my client. I'm going to go in, I'm going to observe first. I'm just going to see what's going on. So most often we'll see these used in FBAs. You'll see those on the test sometimes. Functional behavior analysis. Okay, so the functional behavior analysis, I'm looking at the antecedent, what happened before, the behavior, and the consequences. So I'm using these most often to try to stop behaviors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to observe. I go in a classroom and I see little Johnny's bouncing off the walls. Okay. And then I'm going to, that's my baseline. And then I'm going to give an intervention. So give an intervention that might help Johnny stop bouncing off the walls. Every time Johnny sits in his seat, I'll give him a quarter. Right? Okay. I do my intervention. I go up, I gotta take a baseline. Okay. That's an ABA design. The problem with that is it's not, I haven't replicated. I don't know if it really was my intervention. It might have been something else that's helped Johnny behave. So then I go back and I'm going to repeat it. So that's an ABAB design. So this one is looking at the time studying. Can everybody see my screen? Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking at the time studying. Okay, so that is, we're looking at 100 minutes. That's what time what percentages he's time studying. So then I walk in the classroom, and again, it can be a whole group. It doesn't have to be just one. So I see little Bobby and Susie and Mary and Johnny and Mike, and they're all sitting there. I'm taking a baseline on what percent of their, what the percentage of them time they're studying. There, okay. So this is the time, 5 weeks. Week 6, you know what? I'm going to implement positive attitude, positive attention. So every time Johnny, Bonnie, Ricky, Mike, Sarah, Sue are all then paying attention, I'm going to just, when they're doing their studying, I'm going to give them added attention. That is my intervention. Watch my weeks. Okay? Week 15, week 16, I'm going to stop. Okay? I'm going to come back and observe the classroom for a few more weeks. The baseline is higher than it used to be. But let me just make sure that it was my intervention that actually worked. So I go back, I'm going to repeat my intervention. So I've replicated my study. So that makes it ABAB. Okay, that's a single subject design or an ABAB design. And sometimes I've seen, what's the reverse? Reverse is ABA. So the best one is ABAB because I have repeated it. But ABA would be a single subject design. Did that answer that question? Other questions? Alinda, I don't hear you talking, sweetie.
I say I'm trying to memorize these because you never know if you're going to get research questions. And like you said a couple times ago, that could make the difference.
It sure could.
Points passing or not passing.
And I don't think I have one scheduled soon, but if you go and look at my videos, I did do one on research. It's really not as hard as you think it is, I promise you. And they usually are about 4 or 5. And if you're missing only 2 or 3 and you only need 1 or 2 to get you over, the research definitely would help you. But I promise you, they're not that hard. You need to know your independent variable and your dependent variable, things like that.
I did look at the video and I did take notes off of it. And I feel like I understand everything except the last that I asked you about.
Okay, very good. So let's talk about those family systems. Again, I've heard there seems to be quite a those terms on there, so I want to make sure that you really understand the difference between the terms. So in general, we use a family systems approach. So we use the structural and the strategic are just different types of the family systems approach. Okay, so then that lovely word entropy and negative entropy. Somebody tells me what that means.
I'll try to take a stab at it.
Yeah, yes.
Um, so entropy is where everything inside the family system gets used up and dies.
Okay.
And negative entropy is what is a good thing. Like you want to continue to have that within the system, between the subsystems and the whole family system.
Bingo. That's pretty close. Okay. So everything is a system, and negative entropy is a good thing. You're right about that, Jasmine. You get the bell. Yeah. So it is a good thing. Negative entropy stops the dying process. Entropy really just means kind of it's going to shrivel up and die. So I have managed to create negative entropy this year with my plants. No, no one's died yet. I've watered them in the sun. It's worked out well. But it really is. So in a family, any system, we are assuming that there are boundaries. So when you think of a family system, think of this is your house. So what it takes to run a household. Those are the things that are my inputs from the environment, right? So in your house, you need some income, you have some friends, you have, people from your church, you have everything that surrounds your family to help your family go. Right? It's a village, it's a system, okay, that helps your family. So in this system, we've got a mom and a dad, and we've got the kids. So boundaries, those boundaries are very appropriate. There's some subsystem of the parents, there's single system, and then we also have then the children that are single systems, and then we have input and output. What does a healthy family put out to the environment?
Like
Ask
children
yourself.
that graduate,
Yeah.
children that have good careers. I don't know.
That are productive members of society, right? That's what we want. We want them to get out there and get jobs and be productive. That's what a healthy family would put out. So then, that's your output. Your input is what it brings in. The throughput is what happens in the family, and then the output is what this family would put out. So any system. So if this is a car company, the input would be, the parts and pieces that it takes to run the system, and the output would be what the cars they make. The throughput is what happens on the inside. So then, in the family systems theory, it says that if my input stops, dad loses his job. Dad is now an alcoholic and he's beaten the wife. So that throughput in the family has changed, has it not? And eventually, if this keeps happening, entropy is going to happen. There's not going to be any input from the environment. Dad's going to lose his job. The kids aren't going to have friends over. Mom's family's not coming over because the husband said, don't tell anybody what's going on up in this house. So that's entropy when the whole family is going to begin to shrivel. And if we don't do something, this family will die, right? Some defects will come in. They'll take those kids away. Dad will probably end up, in jail if he beats mom. So all those things will happen. That's entropy. That family system will die. Negative entropy is Susie's social worker comes along, save the day. And she then brings in the house. She brings in some support. Dad goes to AA. We put mom in some domestic violence shelter. The kids get some family therapy. So negative entropy is stopping the dying process. Okay? That is family systems theory.
Miss Pam, I have a question. So,
Yeah.
I always get confused. What would the throughput be? Like, for example, would it be that the throughput between the family is that if everything is going right, that means
Mhm.
the siblings have a good relationship and the parents have a good relationship, and then if dad loses his job and becomes an alcoholic, that means that now the the siblings are seeing this traumatic experience, which then affects their relationship with their father. Is that what the throughput is?
Well, so throughput is what it needs to put out something healthy.
Okay.
Okay. So then for a little bit, if the entropy happens just a little bit, I still got a little throughput left. They might have a little bit of savings left. And mom's maybe still working really hard to put output. The throughput is what happens inside the system to create the output. So, mom, when it's a healthy system, mom and dad have dinner together. They help the kids with the homework. They spend family time. They travel. Right now, they're homeschooling the kids and, they're taking turns. All of those things that's the throughput. That's what that takes the input. It has to go through the system to create those healthy children, which is the output.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. That's what that looks like. Okay. And it really is. It's a business proposal. It's a business plan. Social work just borrowed it, but that's where it came from. So now systems then breaks off, and we have two types of systems theory. We have structural and we have strategic. What's the difference? Exactly. Come on.
Structural is based on the hierarchy and boundaries within a family. That's
You
why the
got it.
social worker comes into play.
You got it.
And strategic is when the social worker tries to come up with a plan at hand to improve the immediate issue between the family.
Perfect. Okay. So structure, I always think of your house. Okay. A structural family therapist is trying to change the structure of the family. So if little Johnny is misbehaving at school and social worker calls mom, and from a structural approach, mom is the social worker is going to say, what's going on in your family? Because the issue is that the structure at home is broken. So my structural is, in a real house, you have a really a good solid foundation, right? My walls, my floors aren't going to fall in. The doors have locks. We have really good boundaries. That's a really great house. Okay. I've got some windows, all that good stuff. So then if there's a structural approach, there's a problem with your foundation. I'm going to come in and social workers they join the family to really change the foundation. Okay. Salvador Minuchin, remember him from back in the day? Okay, he's one of our big founders of the structured family approach. Argentina, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what we know is we talked about this, I think, a little bit last week, how the families run, the systems, the rigidity, all those good things. I'm going to give you some terms. Here's what I'm looking for. Okay, so then again, the structure of the home. And so we have two things that can happen if I have a very poor structure. I have very enmeshed boundaries and I have very rigid boundaries. What's the difference?
Enmeshed is when you have like poor poor boundaries and issues with authority.
Okay,
And I think rigid is when I don't remember if you're too far apart or you're too close.
you got it. You got it. So enmeshed are like this, like they're just like you can't tell one from the other. And not by choice. What I find is a lot of my families that have like 4, 5, 6 kids like right in a row, many times they're enmeshed. Okay. They all do the same thing. The kids don't have an opinion. They don't have a say so. They all play the same sport. They all wear the same clothes. They're just like, uh. I would say the Duggars were enmeshed, if you ask me. They didn't come to my office for therapy, but the show with all the kids, that's just like, okay. So you don't have your own thought. You're not allowed to do what you want to do. We do it as a family.
Oh.
Okay. So those are my enmeshed families. Again, not healthy because you don't get to differentiate. You don't get to know who you are because all you know is you're part of the family. So then, and the other way then are right. So those are my rigid or they're too far apart. So they're very much disengaged. Okay. So I see that again with my poorer families and my upper middle class families. So what I see is that in my poorer families, mom's just working. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. She's working, 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 17 jobs, and she didn't know who the kids' teachers are. Didn't have time. Okay. So but my wealthy families also, it's Memorial Day weekend. Here's the credit card, and here's the keys to the Porsche. Go have fun. Mom and dad are going. Okay, so those are also they're unhealthy because they're not close enough. They're not there. So a structural approach is I'm going to come in and I'm going to change the structure of the family. Okay, I'm going to set good boundaries. We're going to talk about what boundaries should look like. In general, when working with families, and this is not a test question, but in general, if you have children who are 13, 14, 15, 16, unless you have reason to think something is going on, you shouldn't be going through their cell phones. They're entitled to that privacy. And of course, if you believe little Johnny is using drugs, that's a whole different story. But they're entitled to that privacy. And of course, I'm the mom and I pay that bill if I wanted to. I can. but you know what? That's just my punishment. But they're really entitled to that, that they're becoming people. That's part of that whole kind of, as Erickson would say, they're growing up and they're becoming who they are. So you don't do that. Um, Things like, closing the doors, that allowing some privacy. That's what a healthy family looks like. So a mesh, sometimes the wife is enmeshed with the child and she's disengaged from the husband. So a lot in, when, especially in alcoholic families, when dad's over here drinking and mom and kids are over here, that happens. Okay. And this is another, the father goes hunting with his son, things like that. Okay. Some of the keys you're going to look for is that triangulation. What is that? At triangulation, I see someone, 3 people. Alexa, will you elaborate? It is 3 people, but what's it look like?
Sorry, I don't know that.
Sorry, that was my Alexa. Alexa, what is Murray Bowen's triangulation theory?
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, Alexa doesn't know that. I haven't taught her. Sorry.
I'm not sure, Harry.
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
Go ahead. What were you saying? So
I think it's when there are 2 people in a family that aren't getting along, so they bring in a third person, and then they have that other person who sides with one or the other.
So that definitely can happen, and that's a great definition. So sometimes they don't even side with one or the other. The goal of the triangulation is to diffuse what's going on right here. So sometimes, like, mom and dad are fighting, and suddenly Johnny then, has an incident at school, because then what he is doing is he is trying to break up that fighting process. So mom and dad are fighting. She calls, I'm going to call your mom and tell her what you're doing. Exactly. And Elaine, correct. 2 people, and then they bring in a third person to try to diffuse what's happening with those 2 people. Perfect. Okay.
How about when
Go ahead.
when you have a teenager who pits one parent against the other?
She's just smart.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm on my 3rd, okay? So
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oh yes. My so yes, that's so triangulation is the 2 people. So if the mom and so the dad and the teenager are getting along, and then the mom is not in there and the mom comes in to try to diffuse that could be triangulation. Okay? But certainly that's what that looks like, is when there's 3 of them. But triangulation can happen with the mom and a child, and dad's kind of left out, and then dad will come in to try to, if there's a fight between these 2, the mom and the child, dad can come in to diffuse that. Okay. Hierarchy are words that you'll see. Just know the words that you're going to look for if it's structural family approach. This is the one where you join the family. So literally, he would, like, if you could, he would go in the house. He would have the family come in. He did things like, being part of the family to kind of see how things operate. We're changing the structure, changing the boundaries, setting up the clear hierarchies. Somebody's got to be in charge. Okay, so in my mesh families, the problem is making sure that someone's in charge, but everybody else also has their boundaries. The words like emotional cutoff, those belong to structural system. What is that? An emotional cutoff thing?
That's when a person just cuts himself off completely from the family.
Does it have to be physical?
No, it can be emotional, like
It
just
sure
not
can.
wanting to
Got it.
be emotionally or mentally involved with the family at all.
You got it. So it doesn't have to be physical. And you have seen families that do that silent treatment thing. Yeah, just dad just stops talking or mom just stops talking. So it does not have to be physical, but yeah, so that emotional cutoff. And what he would say also is making sure that you have that you're able to differentiate. That's what we want for a healthy family, is that we can tell like who's who. So this is mom and this is mom's likes and this is kid and kids likes. We're not all kind of enmeshed together. The goal is to change the hierarchy, change the structure of the family. And Jasmine, like you said before, strategic family approach is a chess game. Okay, that's not about changing the overall family. It's only about changing the what's happening right now. Okay, so paradoxical. What does that word mean?
Paradoxical is when you continue, like you tell the family to continue the negative behavior in hopes that they'll see how this behavior is not like actually working within the family.
You got it. You got it. So, and I'm not going to use it on the first session. I have to know them a little bit, and I'm not going to
Right.
tell someone to go home and kill yourself because we probably end up losing our license for that. But definitely, that's what I want to do. It's sometimes called prescribing the symptom, as someone said, but that strategic family approach is what I'm going to use. So double bind, that comes from that term, that family as well. This type of times of family. What's that double bind? That is when mom, it's a no win situation. Okay. So double bind is, I will tell the social worker, I think family education is very important. And I want little Johnny to go to school and I want him to go to college. But then when Johnny turns 16, I'm going to tell Johnny that he needs to work 40 hours a week to help support the family. But on the other hand, I'm telling Johnny he better keep going to school. So there's a no win, and you're not contradicting. There's a no win. He cannot win. Okay, so we tell them this thing and we do this one. So it's like there's a damned if I do, damned if I don't. That's what that looks like. Okay, feedback loops. Are you familiar with those? Give you a picture. So feedback. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm not.
Okay. So a feedback loop, most often what happens in my strategic families is it's circular. So they come in and you will say, I've got this presenting problem. So the problem is little Bobby continues to misbehave. And instead of looking at where it came from, anyone taking some ownership, it just kind of continues. So little Johnny continues to misbehave, and then we yell at little Johnny. Johnny does something again to misbehave, and it continues. It continues. Instead of anyone taking ownership or kind of stopping the behavior, it continues just to go round and round and round. Okay, so a structural person would try to stop that feedback loop. I'm sorry, strategic. Strategic.
So it's like a feedback loop, kind of like a cause and effect. Like because of this happened, and it keeps going until they either seek treatment or like someone takes ownership.
Exactly. So it continues over and over again. And little Johnny's acting out at school. Little Johnny's acting out at school because dad's drinking. Mom is then, covering for dad. Little Johnny doesn't get any help in his homework, and it happens all over again. Dad yells at little Johnny because he's not doing his homework at school, and it continues. Okay, so no one is taking any ownership, and we don't want that circular feedback loop. We want a linear feedback loop, so we can kind of see the cause and effect. Then we can kind of see this is what's going on, and then that way little Johnny will stop getting in trouble in school because he's just acting out what he is seeing at home. Okay, let's see anything else about my strategic. Symptoms are the results of misguided attempts of changing an existing difficulty. So the family keeps trying to make changes and they can't get there. With this one, you're not joining, though. You're working with whatever the current issue is in the family. Okay, this one has first and second order change. That belongs to strategic. So what are those, and what would I look for in a first and second order change? First order changes are pretend. We're not quite there yet. We're just pretending. Those are my first order changes. Second order changes are the real changes. So first order changes that fake it till you make it. Okay. Okay, metaphors, directives, reframing, restraining, positive connotation. Those are all some of the terms that you might see when it comes to my strategic family. So on the test, you're just going to learn to look for those terms. Paradoxical directives is the most one you'll see, the most often that you'll see. And again, it's about this current situation. If I'm looking for structural, I'm looking for joining, changing the hierarchy, setting the boundaries. And then a systems approach, then I'm looking at those entropy, negative entropy. Equal finality, that's a systems approach. What does that one mean? Equal finality means that we will all get the same place. We will just get there differently. So the goal is that all families will get to the end. This is systems. All families will get to the end. However, we all get there just a little bit differently. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to try to cover some DSM questions as well as go over just some of those defense mechanisms. So in general, what are defense mechanisms and who are they by?
They're by, I think it was Anna Freud, but
Yeah, it was. Yes, look at that. Somebody's been learning. You are right. Anna actually did them. So on the test, we almost say Freud always, but they actually belong to Anna, his daughter. So yeah. So defense mechanisms are our way of protecting ourselves. So it's our ego that we're protecting, remember? So close some windows out here, guys. Lots of windows open. There are really about 40 defense mechanisms. Okay, we don't need all 40, and if you pull in Ipgar's book, she's got quite a few. So there's a lot of them. Just some of the bigger ones we'll go over. But yes, they did come from Anna. I'm so proud of you. Somebody's been reading. So yeah, the first ones he came up with, but then his daughter later came on with the rest of them. So Freud, of course, is my psychoanalytic guy. So when I see the words like unconscious, I think Freud. Psychoanalytic and psychodynamic are used interchangeably for the test. Okay. In the real world, they don't mean the same thing. Psychodynamic is my short one, but psychoanalytic is what he started with. But for the test, they are the same thing. And they are anything unconscious. Anytime you see a question that says unconscious, insight, pulling things up from the unconscious, those always belong to Freud. Okay. So then, somebody give me some answers. Compensation. Give me an example. Right. Compensation is when I most often I am, and again, I'm not aware of these. There's one that I'm aware of, but the rest of them I'm not aware of. So compensation is a question on the test might be, Barbara is a little overweight and she and her friends are shopping. Barbara feels very bad that she can't keep up with her friends, so she buys them all Tiffany bracelets. Okay, so I'm overcompensating. I feel bad that I can't give you what I think you need, so I overcompensate. So it's compensation, but it's way over what I should give you. Disney dads, anybody divorced and is anybody or a Disney mom? I'm not going to be sexist. A Disney dad who doesn't get to see his kids on the weekends or until the weekends, and he buys them everything. Freud would say because he feels guilty that he can't spend time with them, so he overcompensates by doing all these wonderful things for the kid. Denial. What kind of question am I going to look for when I see denial? It's not a river in the Nile. Denial. So, denial. Most often, I'm going to look for drugs. Yes, 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 yes. So, if you see denial on the test, then I do know I'm going to look for other things first, unless I see substance abuse there, because that is the biggest issue with substance abuse. It's denial. Now, that's not the only time you'll see it. I'm not going to tell you that. But definitely, if I see denial, I'm going to look to make sure that it's the correct defense mechanism, unless I'm really looking at the question talks about someone who's using. Displacement.
Displacement is when you take it out, like Oh, you said give an example.
You can explain it and example. I don't mind. Thanks.
Okay. Displacement is basically where you take something out on either something or an object. So, say for instance, you get reprimanded at work by your boss, and you either yell at your wife for no reason when she's asking you what you want for dinner, or you like kick the garbage can because it's in your way.
You got it. Very good. So most often I'm going to displace my anger because I can't yell back at my boss. Okay. So I'm going to displace it. And you're right. It does not have to be a person. It can be an inanimate object. Okay. And so most often I'm going to taste it. It's feeling for feeling. Displacement is the same feeling. So anger at my boss, and I'm going to come home and my kid says one little thing at me, and I'm going to go off on him. So it's the same feeling when it comes to displacement. Exactly. Good, good, good. It's safer, or it's more convenient for me to take that out on the person who's the closest to me right now. We don't see introjection a lot, so I'm going to start with projection and then talk about introjection. So what is projection? Oops.
Ignore that one.
Projection. I always think about the movie theater. So that big old projector in the back. So
It's
then
like taking.
go ahead.
Can you
Yep,
hear me? Oh,
please.
sorry. It's like taking your feelings or like worries and putting on someone else. Like example, like a male that is cheating when he's going home, he's blaming his wife for like infidelity, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good example. I think of a projector. So it's like my feelings about me are being projected out for the world to see. The whole world can see how I feel, usually about me. Okay. If you don't like someone, you say they don't like you. Exactly. Exactly. So projection is my feelings being projected out. So then I am so sure that, you know what, they don't like me. They don't like me, but those are my feelings. So I am sure that they must think the same thing about me because that's what I'm thinking. I'm projecting my feelings out for the world to see. Okay. Oops, sorry. So then introjection, what's that one? It says conforming feelings for approval, but introjection is I'm taking in what the world is putting out. Okay, so someone says all women do this, blah blah blah. So I'm going to take it in, playing someone's feelings into yourself. Exactly, I'm going to bring them in. It must be true. It must be true, right? Because that's what people say. So I'm going to take those in. So projection is out, introjection is in. Good. Rationalization, what does that look like? Rationalization is, well, of course I gain weight because I'm stuck in the house with COVID. I can make sense of my behavior. You'll often see that. The question might talk about domestic violence, especially when you try to make sense of something. Most often your own behavior, Jasmine. Good, good, good. It's your own behavior. So I'm trying to rationalize what I did. Because I really needed that dress that cost $100, and now we don't have food, but I really had to have that dress. I'm trying to make sense of it. But again, so what you'll see is you weren't hired for a job, so you were hoping for I missed that one. Hold on. And they tell you no. Someone asks you on a date, you tell them no, so they don't. You tell them no, so they say that you didn't want to. Yes, you're rationalizing it. You're absolutely that. Exactly. Let me go back and see that last one. Try to see what somebody else just said. Okay. Okay, I'll come back to that. I was going to address something, but yeah, rationalization is a reason why I did what I did. I'm making sense to me of why this happened, or I'm explaining to you why this happened. Reaction formation.
When it's like the opposite reaction like react opposite than what you believe in. So like for example, a person can say that they hate their sister, they don't want anything to do with her, but she asks her to be her maid of honor and buys her an expensive necklace. Like the feelings are opposite.
I'm creating a reaction I'm forming a reaction that's opposite of how I really feel. I'm going to go back. So Alexa said you weren't hired for a job and you were hoping for your job you were hoping for. So you rationalized by saying that the commute is too far. Alexa, sometimes that might be what's the word? That might be.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Let me turn my Alexa off. I'm so sorry. Let me turn it off. Okay, there's a term called substitution. It's not on this list, I don't think, but sometimes that might be substitution. So I'm aiming for this big job and I didn't get it. So I'll say, oh, but I got this job anyway. So that's a defense mechanism also, but that's called substitution, where I really wanted this, but I'm not going to let you know that I really wanted this. I'm going to pretend like I'm down here where I didn't really want this. Okay, so that one kind of concerned me. And sometimes they're hard to tell. But that sounds more like substitution. Okay. Regression. I think you all know that one, especially when it's got a little kid and he's acting like he has no sense. Mom has a new baby and the kid begins to potty on himself. But the question many times is what happens when you're an adult? So you're in a board meeting and you give a presentation to your boss and the boss doesn't like it and you get up and you slam the door and walk out. That is also regression. So they're not often going to give you the easy one. They're going to give you one that you have to think about. Okay. You do get a few freebies. So if something is obvious, take it. It's obvious. It's 80% application, about 20% recall. So get a few ones that are just recall, but most of them are application. So what you'll see is an example of what it is, and you'll have to pick which defense mechanism that might be. Okay, so repression and suppression, what is the difference?
Repression is when you are like consciously aware, and suppression is when you're unconscious, I think.
Oh, try the other way.
Reverse. Oh, so repression is when you're conscious and suppression is unconscious.
Got it. So the question will say, Pam was abused when she was a kid, and she remembers that her dad did it, but she chooses not to deal with it. Okay? Now, it'll make it very clear you're choosing not to deal with it. Okay? Repression, I don't remember. I don't. Yeah, they said it happened, but I really don't remember. That's the difference. I'm choosing not to deal with it. Suppression is the only one that is a conscious choice. Freud said everything else was unconscious. Okay. I think the other ones are pretty good with. Sublimation seems to be difficult for some people. What is sublimation?
Like when you do like something that like you divert something that's negative into a more socially acceptable manner, I think.
Exactly.
An example could be like you want to be you're always angry all the time and you want to punch, but you do boxing because that's socially acceptable.
That's what Rochelle said. And I'm going to tell you, so I love boxing. I absolutely, my trainer will say, Pam, are you angry today? Because yes, I am. Because it's really okay to punch someone in the face when you're boxing. It's not okay in the real world, but it's really okay if I'm doing boxing, I can punch him and well, he usually blocks me. But it's really, really cool. So I mean, it really is okay. So good example. So sublimation is something that society would not approve of. So, any other time if I walked and punched someone in the face, I'd probably go to jail. But when I'm doing boxing, it's okay. It's really okay. So good job. There are a couple of other ones I'm going to give you. I'm going to pull up something. LOL, porn star. That's a good one. I missed that one. So what was the first part of that? If I like sex and I'm a porn star, what was the first part of that
No,
question?
No,
I
I
missed that
said
one.
according to
Dead.
acting.
So yeah, okay, we'll skip that one. So okay, I'm gonna pull up some questions. We'll talk about some. Which is the one that you said is the only conscious one? That is suppression. Okay, so if the question says you were aware of it and you chose to not to deal with it, that is suppression. Okay, and I'm just pulling up some questions on my first screen, guys, while we do that. Let's go over that, and then we'll come over and pull up some DSM things. I have two screens, so I'm trying to pull up something on my first screen. Freud said in general that those were ways of protecting our ego. So remember Freud. So anything about Freud, you'll see my id, ego, and superego. You'll also see oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital. We're looking at those developmental people. Remember that oral and anal are the same as when it's Erickson. So Erickson's first two stages are the exact same as Freud's first two stages. So oral, Freud would say, I'm stuck in my oral stage. I need to put things in my mouth. That would be trust versus mistrust and the Erickson stage. And then in the second stage, which is what, anybody? What is Erickson's second stage?
Autonomy, is it autonomy versus shame?
It is. So that lines up with anal stage of Freud. So what does that mean?
Stingy.
Okay, so Freud said the same thing. Freud said if you're stuck in the anal stage, then you'll have difficulty. That sphincter muscle is tight, and you have difficulty. So autonomy is, according to Erickson, you know, if I'm learning, I put on my big boy underwear, and I finally got this together, and I'm so excited, and then I have an accident. Okay, so then those are the same stages. Those two match up. So when it comes to Erickson, remember Erickson has 8 stages. He's the only one that goes to adult, and there are 8 letters in his name. Only one. I'm putting up some sample questions to talk about those defense mechanisms. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. There we go. There we go. Okay, so so they're under Freud because that's where the defense mechanisms come from. So let's go ahead and ask some Freud questions while we're there, and we'll pick up some defense mechanisms. So look at 182. Everybody see that one? And if you don't want to answer, with your you don't have to answer to me if you don't want, but at least type in. So Nathan has been working on cutting down on drinking. He tells you he passes a state store, and I have learned that up north that means alcohol store. Yes, liquor store. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
That's someone told me. I live in Tennessee. We just call it liquor store. Okay. So thank you. Okay. Pull into a state store, and he said, I found in my car pulling into a lot. He denies giving much conscious thought to it. Nathan is describing the workings of what? What part of his unconscious, according to Freud, is taking place here?
Id.
Yes, that's okay. What song is Id?
It's pre-conscious.
What song goes to Id? Have I not sung to you yet?
No.
No.
Pleasure Principle. Oh, that's Janet
Oh,
Jackson.
Pleasure Principle.
It is.
I thought that
Okay.
was an actual song.
So it is an actual song.
Yeah.
Okay. That's your pleasure principle. The devil made me do it. My id wants. So the devil made me do it. My super ego is that angel says, don't do it. But if I say, I was just doing it unconscious is always Freud. And of course, that is his id. That is our id. Okay. And that is the pleasure principle. Okay. Look at 185. Ego defense mechanisms in and of themselves are what?
B and C. I mean A and C. No, which one is it?
Yeah, they're A and C.
Yeah.
They're not pathological. Freud said that's what happens. Okay,
Yeah.
that's just what happens. Okay, so then, okay, so then that
Miss
is
Pam, what was number 85?
185 is D. You'll never see it on
Yeah.
the like a D on the test, but they are normal.
Oh,
They're a way of protecting ourselves. They are unconscious, but they are normal. It's not pathological. It is normal, according to Freud. Okay, according to Freud. Okay, 186. Marlene is talking about an adverse relationship experience. She begins to refer to past abusive relationships that she was engaged in. But then she says she really didn't want to think about it and moves on in the section. She is exhibiting what? She knows about it, but doesn't want to deal with it. That is
B, suppression.
yes. That is suppression. That's exactly what it looks like on the test, guys. She knows about it, but she's choosing not to deal with it. If she doesn't know about it, then that is just simply repression. Okay? Or they can't recall it. Okay? Look at 187. Emily's mother, according to Emily, has been very self-critical and self-centered and absorbed all of her life. Emily's mother comes to stay with Emily for 2 weeks. Emily gives up the bed for her parents and sleeps on the couch. She openly shares her food with them and takes them to dinner one night while she's here. About halfway through their stay, Emily's mother goes into a rage and she tells Emily that she is selfish and unappreciative. Emily is shocked. You help Emily understand that her mother is exhibiting the ego defense mechanism of what?
A.
That is
Projection.
Yep.
projection. So what's happening in this question? How do I know it's projection? Prove it to me.
Um. It's projection because that's how the mother feels. And she's trying to put
Ah,
that on to Emily because that's how
you
she feels.
got it. Prove it to me in the question. If you've been with me before, if you tutor with me, prove in the question. What do you see?
Selfish and unappreciative.
You got it. You got it. Okay, dokie. My doorbell is ringing. I'm so sorry. Okay. Look at 188 and 189, and I'll be right back. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. Amazon comes often to my house. Okay, so 188. Jem enters a session with his arms wrapped. When you inquire, he tells you he's been punching the bedroom door after having a fight with his wife over finances again. He is describing the defense mechanism of what?
C.
Displacement.
You got it. You got it. Okay. He didn't punch his wife, thank goodness. 189. David is obsessed with doing all he can to interrupt the gay rights movement. Unconsciously, however, Dave has sexual attraction to his best friend and roommate. This is
Reaction formation.
yeah.
D. Reaction.
Yes, it is. Did I hear that down there from Louisiana?
Yeah.
Oh, D. Oh, I thought it was D. Okay.
He is having a reaction formation. Exactly. Did you cook today by any chance? Can I get some Cajun food? Some
Gumbo. Some.
Oh, while bartering is
Well,
not okay in therapy and practice, I'm not a therapist, and I will barter for food. Just so you know that. Some people in Maryland with the crabs, I'll take that. So,
Focus.
thank you. 190. A willful woman decides to become a lawyer because of her tendency to be outspoken and hard-headed in relationships, including those in the workplace. She is displaying what?
B.
Sublimation.
She is. So explain that to me, somebody. Why is that sublimation?
Because she's
Because
go ahead.
That's what she's doing because, especially in the South where I live right now, if she's willful and got a big old mouth and talking out, is that okay for you good old Southern women? No, that should be
No, it's not.
exactly. But if I'm a lawyer, that's acceptable. That's
Yeah.
what she's doing. She's got that behavior that would not be okay. Good, good, good. Okay. Let's look at number 191. I don't think we went over that one, but Lisa is shy and lacks confidence, but takes on high status job as the director of an advertising company. Her voicemail does not include her name, only her title, as does her email signature. When socializing and asked to talk about herself, the work role is the first thing she discusses. What is she exhibiting?
Identification.
What does that mean?
She's identifying with her role.
Exactly. So not her name. She's just become overly identified with how she sees herself. Identification, sometimes also we see that with celebrities. So, we identify because I am pretty sure that like Beyonce, never has to go to the bathroom. So they're human, but we over identify with them because their life seems so great. And again, Freud would say those are all defense mechanisms. But 192, while we're there, look at Freud. According to Freud, which of those is true?
D.
The client is the expert? Freud said that?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, B. Sorry.
Yes. Who said the client is the expert? Which theorist?
Forgot his name.
I don't know.
Yes, you do know.
Okay.
Rogers, Carl Rogers, person-centered
Carl
therapy.
Rogers.
oh yeah,
Yes, that's
okay.
person-centered therapy. So remember again, so what I teach you is try to teach you is clues. So that is my person-centered,
All right.
Rogerian, that humanistic approach. He came along after Freud, and Freud said, those dumb women, Freud worked with women, they know nothing. But Carl Rogers came along and said, that's not true. I'm here to coach them, teach them, but the client knows what they're doing. So the humanitarian approach belongs to Carl Rogers.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, let's go that one. 9193. Tell me a little bit about psychodynamic or psychoanalytic theory. So this is a typical question that you might see when it comes on if you're on the test. So you may not know all of those things, but what I want you to know is which one doesn't. Okay. So then I know Freud is unconscious, right?
Okay.
Okay. So then cognitive restructuring, retraining my thoughts. Would that be a Freudian thing?
No, I did
Who would
not
that
read
belong to?
that's CBT.
Yes, look at you, Bringo. Training my thoughts. That's CBT. So the answer to this one is actually dream analysis. We most often give free association to Freud. It doesn't really belong to Freud. It belongs to Carl Jung, but you don't need to know that. But in general, that's what we're going to look for. We know that that belongs to Freud. Okay. Inferiority and superiority. Anybody know who that belongs to? Hint, hint, birth order.
Adler.
Yes, yes. Adler believed that our birth order mattered. He talked about family constellations, and that many times we are struggling just to kind of get that birth order to be where we're supposed to be. And if we're born second, first, last, all those good things. Okay. So then I'm going to
Miss
leave
Pam,
it
real quick, what was the answer for 193? You said it was D. I meant C.
because 193, I said it is C. It's dream analysis.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
okay.
So
Free
cognitive
association.
restructuring is Freud.
No, cognitive restructuring. Okay, not. I'm sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. Which is not a technique. So A is not a technique.
Yeah, I
Thank
thought it
you,
was A.
Jasmine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
did
Thank
too.
you. I missed that one. Yes, cognitive restructuring is not a technique that belongs to Freud. Okay. So while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and cover then some of Mo's DSM things. So for my LCSW people, you have to know really some time frames. For my my LMSW people, not as many. I'm going to cover some of the biggies. Bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. What's the difference?
The length of how long
7
the
days.
manic.
One has a hold on. One has a hypomanic phase.
And it's a
Bipolar 2.
no about
Okay,
4.
so I hear lots of people talking. So Rochelle, go ahead and answer me, please.
One has a hypomanic phase.
Okay,
And
which
it has
means one is hypomanic. Are you sure about that?
I mean what?
What you meant to say was 2 is some hypomanic
Yes,
phase. Isn't it?
yes,
What you said?
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Bipolar 1. Okay, that's most often what when we talk about bipolar, when you see it on TV, when you hear about it, it's most often bipolar 1. Okay, bipolar 1 is at least a week, 5 to 7 days. Thank you, of full blown mania. Okay, many times people end up in the hospital. They will have extreme manic episodes. They will have sex with people they've never met. They will spend money they don't have. They'll spend somebody else's money. Okay, it is this grandiosity that you think you are the king, queen of the world. Look at me, I got this. Yes, yes, yes. Really, you don't sleep. It is just like this adrenaline high. Many times it looks like a meth addict. So if you've got that dual diagnosis thing, my LCSWs, that dual diagnosis, you have to differentiate between the meth high and that bipolar 1 because you feel like you're on top of the world. You'll do things that you wouldn't do. You'll get on a plane and travel outside the country. You'll marry someone. I had someone who married someone if they had just met. Like what the heck? Because it's this phase you're going through at least 7 days, no sleep, excessive talking, sometimes pressured speech. Guess what? Did you know what? I can't believe I'm doing this. Blah, blah, blah. And do you hear blah, blah? Like it's pressured, like they just cannot wait to get the words out. Okay, so that's a full blown manic episode. At least 7 days, but I still am going to have the depression. So I've got at least 2 weeks of depression, as well as that full blown manic stage. My bipolar 2 is my hypo. Hypo is a little less. Hyper would be above. Hypo is below. So I'm going to have at least 4 days of a manic episode, but not the same as a full-blown manic episode. Okay. And then if you'll see cyclothymia needs to last how long? Anybody?
Isn't it 2 years?
It is 2 years. Exactly. 2 years. So that's what I'm looking for. And it's not, you may not ever know that. I mean, people, you may not even get diagnosed, but you see, you've still got that low. It's not quite as low as a major depression, but it's up there and you're going down. My green is my average person. So we have here, you know what? Oh my goodness, COVID hit and I'm stuck in the house. I'm a little depressed, but I'm never down where my depressive people are. So when it comes to depression, that diagnosis is at least 2 weeks. Okay. Medication of choice for medication of choice for bipolar 1 or 2.
Well, you said lithium.
Lithium. And what's wrong with lithium? I blurted it out.
Yeah.
So with lithium, why do I have to go to the doctor sometimes? How come?
You have to get your
Salt based.
blood tested.
Yeah.
You have to get your blood tested because lithium can cause a toxicity, a buildup in your blood system. Okay. If lithium is not one of the answers, what is my second choice?
Depakote.
Terragraph?
Bingo, both those are correct. Any of my anti-seizures, okay? Because some people that doesn't work, so anti-seizures work as well as those. Good, good, good. Okay.
I know a person in particular that's lithium level was off and didn't know it, and then it went sky high, and that person almost died.
Yeah.
It's really serious.
Okay.
It
So
can.
yes, it sure can. It sure can. So in the beginning, I think it's every 30 days, then it goes to every 90 days that you really have to have those levels. It's a toxicity that your body builds up and you really can't. Okay. So then my major depression, major depression. Okay. I do know that is at least how long?
2 weeks or more.
You got it, at least 2 weeks. Okay. So most often, all you're going to see on the test are those big diagnoses. So I'm going to look at my bipolar, my depression. What do I take for depression? What medication?
Zoloft.
I can. That's most often, that's one of those SSRIs. Most
Okay.
often, not my first choice for that one, Prozac. You got it. My
Okay.
SSRIs are my serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake interrupters, SSRIs. Okay. So what I'm going to see is some of, and Zoloft is an SSRI. You're absolutely correct. But most often for the test, Zoloft is going to be used to treat anxiety. Okay. So what I really prefer, the best choice of SSRIs, Celexa, you got it. So my, oh, hold on a second. Okay, so then my SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake interrupters. So the best choice of medication for someone who has got some anxiety is a benzodiazepine, Ativan, Valium, Xanax. Why can't I take a benzodiazepine every day?
Because they're addictive.
Exactly, exactly. So you can take a benzodiazepine PRN, which means
As
As
needed.
needed.
as needed. You got it. A PRN is as needed. But I cannot prescribe. I cannot prescribe a PRN. I cannot prescribe a benzodiazepine every day. Okay. So then for depression, again, Zoloft is on there, but be careful because Zoloft is really the medication of choice for anxiety. My
Okay.
body doesn't know the difference between anxiety and depression. It looks the same in my body. It's the issues with serotonin. So then but the given choice for, especially on the LCSW guys, you're going to look at that Zoloft. That's the best choice of SSRIs for anxiety.
Okay.
Okay. So the others you'll see
Is that just
Lexapro, all the difference. Go ahead.
is that just for the test news PM? Like to like for they choose like Zoloft for anxiety?
In
Or
real life as well as the test.
okay. Okay.
Okay. That one mimics real life. So sometimes they do, but yeah, that mimics real life. There's something about Zoloft that just works better for my anti-anxiety people. And again, it's issue with your serotonin. That's a biochemical imbalance. And again, my body doesn't know the difference. By the way, when it comes to autism or ASD, autism spectrum disorder, the same issue goes on. It is an issue with your serotonin. Okay. So there's not a one definitive treatment for ASD, autism spectrum disorder. We treat the symptoms. Okay. So if they're up and down, they can't sit still, we're going to give them a Ritalin or a Concerta or a Dexedrine. Those are all, what kind of drugs are those?
Stimulant?
Stimulants. And stimulants are the only drugs that are paradoxical, have the opposite effect. Okay. So might see that on the test. Sometimes you'll see an MAOI. I don't know if those are my older school, my MAOIs. The problem with MAOIs, again, these are for my LCSW people. Usually I only see a few of these on the LMSW. My MAOIs are my old school antidepressants. And the thing with my old school antidepressants, you cannot have anything that has tyranine in it. So that's the big deal. It'll say, what can you not eat? You can't eat any of the aged cheeses if you're on MAOI. Strong aged cheese, any cured meat, any of those things. So that was one of the reasons when the SSRIs came along that we got rid of the MAOIs. But you might see that issue also. Tyramine, you cannot have it in your diet if you are on one of those medications. Okay. So then I talked about my SSRIs. Those are really good for my depression, my anxiety. My first choice would be a Zoloft if it's a PRN. However, I can't take it every day. And while we're there, what are those terms? QID? What does that one mean?
4 times a
4
day.
times a day.
You got it. So what if it's the H, QIH?
Every hour? I don't know.
4 times an hour. The Q is the 4,
Oh.
so the H. Okay. So BID twice a day, BIH twice an hour. Okay. And then the PRN is the ones that are as needed.
As needed.
As needed. You got it. You got it. Okay. So let's look at some of our depressive disorders. We have that one that used to be called dysthymia, and now we have it. It's called persistent depressive disorder. What is that one?
It's not as severe as major depression.
No, explain that to me.
It's not as severe as major depression, but
The people who have it wouldn't agree. What I don't have is that 2 weeks of can't get out of bed. What I have, and someone typed it in, is I'm going to have at least, it happens for 2 years. Okay, it's 1 year in children. So if you're under the age of 18, I'm looking for a 1 year, but it's 2 years if you're an adult. And it is like that cyclothymia that's that up and down. So it's called persistent depressive disorder now, but it used to be called dysthymic. And it's just kind of like that, undergoing, like always that low thing going on. Okay. So those 2 weeks do happen. So at least 2 weeks of depressed episode, more days than not. So I've got to have that depressive disorder, but then also then it's going to continue. Okay. So the people who have it's like an overall kind of blah. Like I just don't feel like getting out of bed. I don't feel like doing anything. And overall just kind of blah feeling. Okay. That irritable mood in children. I'm going to see insomnia or hypersomnia. That's I can't sleep or I get too much sleep. People who have a depressive disorder most often don't get a good sleep. So they may be in bed, hypersomnia, getting some sleep, but they're not going to get a full night of rested sleep. Okay. Psychomotor agitation. What does that mean? Exactly. The typing, the fidgeting. Exactly. That's my psychomotor agitation. Perfect.
Miss
Okay.
Pam, I have a question.
Yes.
For the I'm sorry, Dr. Pam. I have a question. I have to answer this. The question I have is I forget the name of the disorder for like basically major depression, like but it's in children. Is that on the exam?
Okay, so yes, okay. So anybody, what is that one?
What?
I forgot
Those
the name.
children who have all of those moods up and down, up and down.
Is
Yeah,
it
mood dysregulation.
Mood dysregulation
dysregulation.
disorder.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the kids that we will find who are in the grocery store throwing a tantrum because mom said they can't have an orange. Okay, so there's an overreaction. So really, those it is more of a bipolar in kids as opposed to a depressive. So we can diagnose children with major depression, but it really is more of a mood disorder when it comes to my my kids. Okay.
And what age does it have to be?
It is, oh gosh, I don't know that one actually. I think it's 12, but I'm not really sure about that.
Okay.
I'm very honest with you. The question will usually say he's a kid. because
Okay.
that's new to the
Okay.
DSM-5. So it'll say very clearly he's a kid. So that's why. So before we would diagnose children with, we would just give them that disorder up to the age of 18. Thank you, Alexa. I appreciate that. I really do. Because before it used to just, we would know, we would diagnose that with in kids, the whole bipolar disorder, and we're trying not to do that anymore.
Thank you.
No, thank Alexa. She was great. I turned her off. Okay. So then there's also that premenstrual disorder. That one's new to my DSM. What is that one? That is probably one of the most wide, there's such a wide frame when it comes to that. So if somebody has any issues 2 weeks before their period or 1 week after their period, any mood changes, that's almost the entire month. Okay, so that's what that one looks like. Like anytime that you have something, that can be a premenstrual disorder syndrome. Okay, I'm going to pull up some questions. 1 second here. Let's get these over. Okay.
It's a question about medication. Should we know the generic names?
No. So most often what it does, it'll have that name slash the generic name, like Respital slash Respiridol.
Okay.
I haven't, and anyone else, please, if someone can tell me differently, I'm really okay with that. But most often what we see is two names. They're not trying to get you to be a, this psychiatrist, a pharmacist. I get into read mode. Oh, come on. Okay. I'm going to do some diagnostic questions here. Okay, so let's look at this one. Can everybody see this one?
Mhm.
Okay. So a therapist in an inpatient unit conducts an intake. I don't like the way that's looking. That one. View panel. Close that.
The inpatient unit conducts an intake of 4-year-old men who chose to rehabilitate.
Okay. A therapist on an inpatient unit conducts an intake with a 40-year-old man who was transported to the hospital by the police after an altercation in the park. He is unable to provide medical or social history and reports having no memory before he arrived at the hospital. A police check reveals that he is an executive at a large company in a nearby city who was laid off a few weeks ago. At the end of his long stay, he has recovered his memory. At the end of his weekend-long stay in the hospital, he's recovered his memory. What is he diagnosed with? Is he A, B, C, or D? What is that diagnosis?
A.
Rule out what you don't
Okay.
know. Always, always remember to rule out, okay? So in general, I'm going to kind of go with what I don't know, and that is correctly. Dissociative amnesia with dissociative fugue. So remember my dissociative disorders, they are ones where I kind of, my body leaves my mind leaves my body. That's a dissociative disorder. Fugue is a short term. Okay. Good, good, good. Thank you, thank you. Okay. A school therapist receives a referral for a 13-year-old boy for inattention and poor grades. During observation and interactions with the student, the therapist experiences the boy as intelligent and highly verbal, but the therapist experienced the boy as intelligent and highly verbal, but notes he has difficulty following instructions and reports. He avoids reading and writing activities. He's most likely diagnosed with what? Okay. Rule out, rule out, rule out. Go back to the question and prove it. Okay, Alexa, tell me what you see to prove autism spectrum disorder. Okay. So with autism, anywhere on the spectrum, what I'm going to look for sometimes is issues with socialization, inability to make eye contact. Okay. Difficult following directions does not necessarily make it a autism spectrum disorder. Okay. My autistic kids must like routine. They're used to that. Okay. So it's a learning disorder. And some people pick that. How do I know this is a learning disorder? What in the question? Let me see that.
Because it says that he has difficulty. He has difficulty following directions, but he avoids reading and writing.
You got it. So what
But
I'm looking for in a learning disorder is there's a discrepancy. Johnny scores 112 in math and he scores 5 in English. So there's something going on there that those two don't match. So he's intelligent, he's highly verbal, but he's avoiding reading and writing activities. So somewhere there's a discrepancy between his IQ. There's something going on there. So there's some kind of learning disorder. So that's what I'm looking for. So it did talk about that he was inattentive and poor grades. So my first thought was, ADD, ADHD. However, the rest of the question didn't support that. So I'm always going to go back to the question and prove what am I looking for. Conduct disorder. What is that one, guys?
Like a criminal, like a child criminal.
A child criminal, yes. And if my child criminal is not treated when he's 18, what am I going to diagnose him with?
Antisocial personality.
Antisocial, yes, yes. So my ODD kids are not mean. They may throw a chair, they may do all these things, but they're not mean. My conduct disorder kids are the ones out there like throwing rocks at the ducks and trying to put the animals' eyes out, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this one's on 2 pages. I'm sorry, guys. So, a therapist evaluates a 6-year-old girl with moderately severe cerebral palsy. Among other symptoms, the parent reports that the child is often observed attempting to chew and eat non-food items, including sand and houseplants. Sometimes we're able to intervene when she is chewing on the item, but she has been hospitalized on one occasion for ingesting leaves from a potentially harmful plant. What is most likely her diagnosis? In caprices, autism spectrum disorder, rumination disorder, or pica. Yes, pica. Anything that's not food in her mouth. Most often, I'm going to see that pica disorder with people who have some low functioning, so maybe mildly mentally retarded, people who and again, you've seen it on TV with everybody, but in general, I wouldn't see that with my normal population. Okay. In caprices, what is that one?
In caprices.
When
That's
you
all
have
they
issues,
poop.
but you pooping.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Poop.
poop on myself. And
Yeah.
caprices is
Yeah.
diagnosed by the age of 5. So what we know is that we don't have any issues if you're not potty trained up until the age of 4. Okay, I know the test, and many of us grew up in a culture that says you should be potty trained by 2. Your mom and them said that is not what the text says. The text says that we're not worried about potty training or you're peeing on yourself until they're 4. Okay, so however, so we're past the age of 5 and we are still having pooping on ourselves or peeing on ourselves. That's where we get the diagnosis. In copresis is poop, in uresis is pee. Okay. Pica, of course, we talked about as non-food. Rumination disorder. What's that one?
Ain't that throwing up, like eating and throwing up?
So what rumination disorder, and you can YouTube it, it is so gross. We really thought it only happened in kids. Now we know it happens in adults as well. I chew and chew and chew and chew. I swallow my food or I spit it up and I put it back in my mouth.
Ew.
Okay. And it's not a physical problem. The doctors have said there's nothing physically wrong of why this person cannot swallow. So it is just something emotional piece. If you've ever seen someone do it, I was the Girl Scout leader with my little kids, and we would eat breakfast. And it was the whole thing, and she would eat eggs and gross, totally gross. And you can't, but you can Google it if you want to do it. It's rumination disorder. Okay. This one. A therapist begins treatment with a child diagnosed with ADHD and intends to use cognitive behavior therapy to help improve the child's concentration. The therapist would most likely need to help the child in which order, in which additional area? Expressive language, talking, social skills, basic hygiene, or bladder control. He is ADHD. Got it. That is social skills. Many times my ADHD kids don't read social cues very well. Okay. So they are talking, talking, talking a mile a minute. Their body space, sometimes in your body space, they don't have that stop mechanism. Okay. So we all think things. We all think things that we probably shouldn't say. My ADHD people are going to say it. I would tell my children that, and I'm an adult ADHD person, so, but I would tell my children, every thought in your head doesn't have to come out of your mouth. There's some thoughts you can just keep in your head. Okay. And again, my medications of choice are my stimulants. I'm going to use a Ritalin. I'm going to use a Concerta. Dexedrine is an old-fashioned diet pill we might see. I haven't seen this on the test yet, but if we're looking for a medication that is not a stimulant, Strattera, those type now are used. So Strattera is not a stimulant, but in general, the stimulants are the ones that have the paradoxical approach. They act differently. They act the opposite. Okay. A couple enters treatment with a therapist due to the increasing conflicts and distance after 2 years of marriage. The man reports feeling as if his wife needs his approval for everything and is exhausted with her constant worries and questions about what she should do. The woman endorses frequent worries about her husband leaving her or dying young and states that only asks opinion because she doesn't trust herself. Even before I finish, what do you think this is?
Dependent personality.
Yes, okay. My personality disorders, they don't come for treatment. That's ego syntonic, not ego dystonic. So she just thinks he's the perfect person in the world. So she is dependent personality disorder. That is correct. My avoidance, remember, they really do like people, but they're afraid of being judged. My avoidant people are going to stay away because they're afraid you're going to judge them. My schizoids, on the other hand, they do not want anything to do with you. My schizoids are loving COVID. Okay. They are like, oh my gosh, I don't have to see people. I can stay home. They love COVID. Okay. So
Is
then
avoid more or neither or no?
say again, avoidance are.
It is that more of like you want to be a loner or that's not avoidant?
No, my avoidance really like people. They're just terrified you're going to judge them. So then, they're going to stay
Okay.
away from you. And you might see a question. I've seen a question that talks about they she grew up in a household where she never felt good enough. That was not going to open for me. She never felt good enough. Her dad always put her down. So that was the makings of kind of that avoidant behavior. But in general, open up for me, schizoid. There we go. Okay. So yes, my avoidants really do like people. So if you're at a party, an avoidant might be at a party. He really might. If they went up and you went up and talked to them, they might talk to you. They might. They really, really like people, but they're terrified you're going to judge them. On the other hand, my schizoids do not like people. They don't like fish. Okay. They are going to stay away from you. My schizotypal, to remember the difference between the two of those, my schizotypals are typically more like schizophrenics. Okay. So that's my schizotypal people. They're weird. They're just weird. They might put foil up to the window. Magical thinking. Yes. Magical thinking is okay when you're a kid. If I believe in Santa Claus, that's great. Magical thinking as an adult, that means that, if I try hard enough, my TV will change itself. I'm thinking that's happening eventually. I'm just going to say that to you anyway. I just think eventually they'll just implant my remote in my brain and I can just. But for the test, my schizotypals are typically more like schizophrenics. Okay. Remember, personality disorders, they are not coming for treatment. They don't have a problem. They think they are fine. We don't diagnose them until the age of 18. However, if you ask their parents or ask someone in their childhood, they've always been that way. Those are my personality disorders. And those terms are ego syntonic and ego dystonic. Okay. Ego dystonic, I don't like this.
So, Miss Pam, right? The only personality disorder that is like ego dystonic is the obsessive compulsive personality disorder.
No, all personalities are ego
Oh,
dystonic.
okay.
But thank you for pointing that out. So my ego dystonic, my OCD diagnosis, they don't like that. And I'll pull that up in a second. But all personality disorders and one mental health disorder, which is
Borderline.
nope, borderline is a personality disorder.
Oh yeah.
My anorexics. Sorry, I want to do that. Let me do that.
Oh yeah.
Eating disorder.
No, not all eating disorders, just my anorexics. My
Oh,
anorexics really believe that they're always fat. So the only other disorder besides personality disorders is my ego syntonic. They're all ego syntonic except for, pull that up for me. Come on, open up. I think my computer's just going to quit. I've talked all weekend.
I had a question. It's about the schizotypical.
Mm-hmm.
Now they don't have delusions or
They do not. They
None,
do not.
yeah, none of the personality disorders.
They do not. So if they had any kind of hallucinations or delusions, then they would get the schizophrenia diagnosis.
Okay.
So it's in their personality, ingrained in who they are, but they are not. They do not hallucinate, or they do not hear or see things. Okay. So my ego syntonic, again, those are things that are in sync with who I am. My ego dystonic, I don't like this. I'm going to come for treatment because I don't like this. So all the personality disorders, and the only other disorder that's ego syntonic is anorexia, because my anorexics always believe that they're fat. They can't be skinny enough in their mind. Okay. So that is the only one. Now you talked about obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay. So in general, though, remember, my personality people are not coming for treatment. Somebody might make them. They might, that was one of the reasons they were in Access 2, because if we could get the people to come in for an Access 1 diagnosis of something, then we could definitely work with that Access 2 disorder. Okay? No longer we have those. So my OCD and my OCD-P. The difference between the two of those is, anybody?
OCD is when you have like compulsions, and you just constantly have to keep doing the same thing. OCPD is when you just have to, like, perfection, like you have to meet deadlines and things like that.
Very good. That's a very good differential diagnosis. Very good. Okay, but the exceptions come with both. Okay, borderlines,
Okay.
they come. Borderlines do not come. If they do come, it's for something else. And borderlines love you, love you, love you, hate you, hate you, hate you. So if the question comes that, oh my gosh, you're the best therapist ever. I've seen 17 other therapists and none of them has been as good as you. Run quickly. Okay, because when you show up late or you wear the wrong color or you didn't pronounce their name right, they're leaving. Okay, borderlines, very black, very white. Personality disorder, not coming for treatment. Again, that something might happen, someone might send them there. Most often, they're going to come for something else, and then you're going to notice that they're borderline. If you've been in a room with someone and you begin to feel crazy, they're borderline. Okay, very black, very white, no gray. Love you, love you, love you, love you. Oh my gosh, you were 15 minutes late to my session. You hate me. I'm never coming back. Okay, very, very black and white. My OCD and my OCDP, again, OCDP is my personality disorder, not coming for treatment, in sync with who they are, don't have a problem. Okay, so you probably know some people who are OCDP. That is, they've always washed their hands. The COVID is no big deal to them. They've always washed their hands. This is who they are. Okay, so OCD is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. My obsessions are my thoughts. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with the germs on my hand. Can't you see the germs? They're filthy. Those are my thoughts. I'm going to relieve the anxiety caused by my obsessions by washing my hands. Compulsions. Those are my compulsions. I've got to wash my hands. So the obsessions are the thoughts that causes anxiety. The compulsions then help relieve the anxiety, but I end up with raw hands. OCD. So my OCPD, if you ask their mother, they will say, you know what? When Johnny was 3, he had to line up his silverware in a certain way. When Johnny was 2, he had to have 7 bites of cereal. Okay. It's ingrained. It's who they are. They don't have a problem. They've always been this way. So, and what you said before, I think that was Jasmine, is my OCD. One of the reasons that they continue the behavior is because they truly think something awful will happen, something catastrophic will happen if they don't follow their routine. You'll see changes in OCD people's behavior when the anxiety goes up. They feel like they have no control, then the compulsion goes up. Okay, so my COVID people right now who are stuck in the house, if they're OCD, their obsessions have increased. The anxiety has increased. Oh my gosh, I'll get COVID. My hands are going to be dirty. So then you'll see their compulsions go up. Now they're doing everything in 7s. Okay, my OCD people, they strive for perfection. On the test, if I am the person who will turn in work late, they're OCPD. It's their personality disorder. Okay, so my OCD, it will get worse with the anxiety. OCPD, not going to change. Easily recognize OCD. Okay, so again, OCD, it stems from something awful is going to happen. There's going to be a catastrophe. I worked with a woman one time who had to bleach her kitchen every night. And I would say, so what happens if you don't bleach your kitchen? Then my kid will get sick. What happens if your kid gets sick? Then my husband will leave me. And then my wife will fall apart. I'll be single, blah, blah, blah. This whole thing will happen if she doesn't do her normal routine. My OCPD, those people are just kind of, it has to be perfect. I have to wash my hands because it has to be perfect. I'll do it over and over again. So if the questions comes up, who's going to be late with their assignment? It's someone with that personality disorder, not the OCD. Okay. So in general, those clusters of personality disorders, we have cluster A, B, C, and D. I haven't seen that on the test anymore, but just kind of know that we do have those. My cluster A, those are always kind of my weirdos. Okay, and again, I haven't seen it on the test anymore, but sometimes it helps you to remember when we look at them. They are not coming for treatment, ever, ever, ever. They'll come for something else. Something else happens, you happen to catch them though. My cluster A are my odd people, paranoids, schizoids, schizotypal. Paranoid personality disorder, they don't hear or see things, okay? They just have a thought that someone is out to get them. They're conspiracy theorists, and they've thought that way their entire life. Okay? Schizoid people with paranoid issues see people walking behind them. A delusional person who has some paranoid delusions, they see people in the trees. This personality type, they've always been paranoid. They're always sure that's going to happen. Schizoids again, weird. They don't like people. They love COVID. Leave me alone. Schizotypal, typically more like a schizophrenic, bizarre. You'll see them wearing bizarre clothes. I've worked with someone who wore like the hat with the muffs over his ears the entire time, not just winter, the entire time, because that way the people couldn't get in his head. He didn't hear or see things. He was just a little weird, schizotypal. So my cluster B, those are my dramatic, unpredictable. For the test, my drama queens are always female. My narcissists are male. In the real world, that is not true, but I have not seen anything different on the test. And if you have seen that, please let me know. My narcissists, remember, have low self-esteem, very grandiose, okay? The people in their lives just have to be collateral, okay? A narcissist person, he's not going to make a big deal when he walks in the room. That's my drama queen. She's going to come in late. She's going to come in her 4-inch heels and short skirt and say, oh my gosh, I'm here. That's my drama queen. My narcissist is going to come in the room and he's going to remind you that you are very lucky to be breathing his same air. Okay, that's my narcissist. Low self-esteem, God's gift to this world? And what do you mean? A question might say, he's done all of these things for his wife. Oh, he's done all of these things and his wife doesn't appreciate it. Okay, I did this. I worked all day. I bought a great car. I took her to great restaurants and she doesn't appreciate all the things I've done. That's my narcissist. And again, for the test, it's almost always male. Histrionics are my drama queens. They are female. Borderlines are black and white. Love you, love you, love you. Hate you, hate you, hate you. And my antisocial people, that doesn't mean they're not friendly. Please don't ever think that just because that's what people say on TV. They're my sociopaths. They are very friendly. They'll invite you over to dinner. They'll feed you dinner and they will kill you and make it your fault. Okay. So Ted Bundy, the serial killer in Florida that was very charming and got the women to he pretended like he was hurt and got them in his car and he killed them. That's an antisocial personality disorder. That is the term we would use. So sociopath is what you would see on TV. But if you go back and you look at the Ted Bundys and the Jeffrey Dahmers, their parents would say when they were a kid, they were killing ducks. It's ingrained in who they are. My cluster C, those are my anxious, fearful people. Avoidance, again, they're going to avoid the crowd because of how you might judge them. Dependent personalities, they can't do anything by themselves. They don't trust their own judgment. And again, my obsessive compulsive personality disorders. That's my last one. Okay, guys, I've gone over my time. I just wanted to get some things in. When it comes to the test, just remember the biggies. Even on the LCSW, they're not going to ask you those little bitty things, but in caprices, in euresis, you'd need to know. Personality disorders, you'd need to know. When it comes to schizophrenia, remember that brief psychotic disorder, 1 month to 3 days to 1 month. Brief psychotic disorder. And then my schizophrenia form, a form of schizophrenia is from 1 month to 6 months. Full blown, after 6 months, it's schizophrenia. Okay? Schizoaffective disorder is a combination of both. A mood disorder, sometimes an affective, AFFECT, affect disorder. That gives me a schizoaffective disorder. So I've got the full-blown schizophrenia, hallucinations, delusions, as well as that mood disorder. Okay, those are the biggies that you'll see on the test. My LCSWs also, and sometimes my LMSWs, the commercials you see on TV for medications, those are on there sometimes, okay? So I don't watch TV, but those popular drugs that are for I can't even think of it now, Lyrica, sometimes you might see some of those because the popular drugs are many times on that test. Okay, I got to wrap you up, guys. Questions? Okay, it's been a pleasure. This video will be in the chat box. In this box, it'll be here for 30 days. I will upload it to YouTube, but not for about 30 days. So if you go back to this chat box, right click it, you can save it to wherever you want to save it, but it will be there. Okay? So I don't have anybody testing before next week, I don't think. So I will see you all next week. If I don't see you sooner for an individual session, it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys for doing what you do. The world needs you. Hang in there. Bye.